The car right beside me is a car that needs no introduction. Since its first release just a couple of months ago, Ford Philippines has already sold 15,000 units of this particular mark. So this is the 2023 or 2024 next-gen Ford Territory, or by popular demand, Ford Territory, in the top-of-the-line Titanium X trim. In this video, let's find out what truly makes this special compared to the rest of the compact crossover SUVs in its segment. So styling-wise first, is it a lot better compared to the rest of the crossovers? Well, I would say yes. When a lot of crossovers nowadays, especially the Chinese ones, they want to go for a very futuristic approach. Ford played that pretty safe with this, and they just made it a little more on the elegant side. It's modern, but it's elegant. The hood gets like 8 character lines on it. Your grille too, there's a lot of things going on over here. There's, I don't know what the geometric patterns on this one, but yeah, it looks pretty good too. You even have an ADAS sensor down below right there. That is pretty comprehensive. We'll talk about that later. You get LED DRLs, your turn signals are up top, and once you move further down below, what you get are LED headlights too. For the side too, they weren't going for a very sporty or futuristic look. It just looks pretty elegant. It has a proper mix between curves and sharp edges. So you get like 2 character lines, but the rest, they are mostly curved. This Titanium X variant gets 19-inch rims. Go for the lower variant, you get 18-inch rims. And there's just enough use of chrome, so around your windowsills and also for your door handles. Compared to its previous generation, it just looks a lot more Euro-like. It looks a lot more premium and a lot more balanced too. Now for the rear, I also really enjoy how badging is pretty minimal. So aside from your Ford logo and Territory spelled out for you, it's just the Titanium X logo, and they weren't really going all out with this. You don't even get fake exhaust vents, which honestly is a rarity nowadays. On the top too, you have a very slim spoiler effect, and you get a reverse camera with reverse sensors too. Now let's open up this tailgate. It is powered for this Titanium X variant, and you even have a hands-free kick function if I can get it to work, but unfortunately it keeps failing on me. Could be my issue. Anyway, once this trunk is open, you have ample space to put a couple of luggages in here. If you want extra space, yes, you can also fold down those seats 60/40, and hooray for a space saver spare tire. So the exterior looks pretty good, but what about the powertrain? So what you have is a 1.5-liter turbocharged gasoline engine, and they are branding this as the EcoBoost engine, making 160 horsepower and 248 Newton meters of torque. Not the best when it comes to power, but it can still keep up with the rest of its peers. Fuel economy, given the size of this vehicle, it's about okay inside the city. You can do around 8.6 kilometers per liter, but on the highway, I guess, again, because of the size of the vehicle, it suffers a little bit. It does around 13.9 kilometers per liter. Now, I want to start with one of the biggest highlights of the Ford Territory Titanium X, and that is its rear seats. You see, this car has just so much space in here, and even ingress is so easy for not only kids with their child seats, but also for elderly adults. They don't really have to climb into the car nor like sink into it. This is just the perfect height. Anyway, now let's check the door thud. That's pretty solid too. Now, once you are back here, space is just crazy abundant. You even have extra cutouts on the front seats that truly give you even more space and headroom. Despite this panoramic sunroof, it's also pretty good. And yes, speaking of that panoramic sunroof, it is pretty big too. Now, the materials that they give you is also pretty premium. So you have it on your doors, you have soft touch materials there. And this being the Titanium X variant, you get a mix of like white and domino, as they call this black. So it's a two-tone black and white interior with a lot of wood accents too. Faux wood accents, that is. Now for your toys, there truly isn't that much, but you do get your own air vents. You have a USB-A port, and you even have this center armrest with 2 cup holders. And seating 3 people at the back of this vehicle is probably one of the best because the car is pretty wide. And again, space is really good. Footwell is large, and you don't even have a transmission tunnel. Now for the front seats, you check the door first. Sounds pretty good too. And the materials that you get from the back, they do carry on over to the front, obviously. So premium materials on your dashboard, premium materials on the side of the doors, and even your seats too. The leather on it's really good. The center armrest, that's pretty good too. But just like the previous generation Ford Territory, it still has a little bit of, you know, like cheap feeling plastic on it. So you get lots of them, also in piano black, which is a double whammy. But yeah, let me just like Yeah, you can feel those are pretty cheap plastic, and they are fingerprint magnets too. So that is true for the center console, for the AC buttons, and even this overhead sunglasses holder. Yeah, but those aside, the build quality here feels pretty good. The steering wheel, yeah, that feels very solid. Your rotary E-shifter, that also feels pretty solid. But okay, that aside, let's go back to the steering wheel. Leather wrap with whitish blue stitching. You get buttons for advanced driver assistance systems, and you can even tilt and telescope it. For this titanium X trim, you have a 12-inch digital instrument cluster that is actually pretty easy to read, and it has a classic setup, so it's not all too digital and futuristic looking, just like the exterior of the vehicle. And over at the center, you have yet another 12-inch touchscreen and infotainment screen with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, and it is also wireless. This is also where you're going to get your reverse camera as well as your 360-degree view camera. Now move further down below and you get a wireless charging pad. That aforementioned rotary E-shifter, it is honestly pretty easy to use, and the best part about it is that it even comes with a low mode, like a low gear mode, which allows you to engine brake, unlike some of the cars in this class. Behind that, you have an electronic parking brake, and you have so much buttons here for your auto hold function, your automatic parking function, which works for both perpendicular and parallel parking, as well as your auto hold and your parking sensor switches. However, what I don't like about the center console is that you have your rotary E-shifter, right? But just behind it is your volume knob. So can you imagine trying to turn up your volume but ending up putting your car into park or drive or neutral? Yeah, that honestly isn't the safest out there, but a couple of days with this vehicle and you will get used to it. For the seats, they are also not very aggressively bolstered, so it's a very relaxed seating experience. It's also pretty firm, good for long journeys, and it's 10-way power adjustable for the driver's side. But unfortunately, even for this top-of-line variant, you only get manual seat adjustments for the passenger side. Now, earlier I mentioned that this car has a very comprehensive suite of advanced driver assistance systems. So you get adaptive cruise control, you get lane keeping assist, lane departure warning, rear cross traffic alert, autonomous emergency braking, and what I mentioned earlier, the automatic park function. So this is practically a semi-autonomous driving vehicle. You'll see that in the drive later on. So now we drive the Ford Territory Titanium X, and this car is extremely boring to drive. But don't get me wrong, that is a good thing, because the target market for the Territory isn't really people looking for like a fast car. It's meant to be a comfortable cruiser, a city cruiser, even a highway cruiser. And in that regard, this one really does deliver well. It is really quiet here inside the interior. There's a sports car just beside us, and it doesn't, the exhaust of it doesn't really permeate too much into the cabin. And when you are going at high speeds, wind noise, you barely hear it. Tire noise, you barely hear it either. It really is just pretty good. However, let's say you do want to drive this a little bit quickly. Well, it gets annoying because let's say in city speed, like I'm doing 50 kilometers per hour now, and I'll floor the throttle in 3, 2, 1. Yeah, that's like a solid 3 seconds before the car decides to give you any sort of power. In highway speeds, it gets even worse. It's like a 3 to 4 second delay, even if you put this car into sport mode. Now, I think it's not just a throttle delay. I believe it's a combination of throttle delay, transmission delay, as well as turbo lag. So as long as you drive this a little bit more humanely, it's gonna treat you really well. But drive it quickly, then not so much. Now going back to comfort, and I think that the Ford Territory is really one of the most comfortable, if not the most comfortable car in its class, because not only is it quiet, as I've said earlier, but the way it deals with speed bumps and potholes is just really good. Even if you go over like rumble strips, it just does it oh so composedly. However, there is a downside to that, and because it is comfort tuned, the very moment you want to try to push this over a corner, well, it's not going to be happy. It's going to roll on about, and it's going to bob on about. Finally, let's talk about the advanced driver assistance systems, particularly the lane departure warning, lane keep assist, and the adaptive cruise control. The adaptive cruise control even has a stop and go function, which is pretty useful inside the city. As long as you don't fully stop for like more than 2 seconds, it really will automatically go forward again. However, it still is a little bit jerky, just like the rest of the adaptive cruise controls we find nowadays. again, inside city speeds only. But when you're on the highway, I find it to be pretty smooth. It's actually a very usable system. The only issue I have with it is that a lot of the cars in this class nowadays, they have like a lane keeping assist with centering. And that's not the case here. It just bounces you back between the two edges of the lane markings, and that does get pretty annoying. That means you can never be hands off with the steering wheel at any point in time. Also, you can configure this to give you a warning for your lane departure warning, and it has two modes. You can either have an audible warning or like a steering wheel vibration warning where it kind of fights you. Now, in most cars, the very moment you turn on your turn signals, that will cancel, allowing you to change lanes with ease. But with the Territory Titanium X, even if you use your turn signals, it kind of still fights you, and it kind of still wants you to stay in your particular lane. It's like you're not allowed to change lanes. But let's end the driving segment on a good note, and that would be visibility, because you see so much out of this car. The windows are pretty big, your side mirrors are mounted on the doors themselves, so you can see a lot more through your A-pillar. And also, a lot of crossovers, they don't give you the same sort of commanding driving position as taller body on frame SUVs. But for the Territory Titanium X, it allows you to jack up your seats so high, it's ridiculous. In most cars, when I set my driving position, I would usually set it to the maximum height since I am only 5'6" short. But for this one, when I set my seat height to the maximum position, I will almost touch the headliner. That's how high it can go. So if you're a little bit on the short side, just like me, you're gonna love the driving position inside the Ford Territory Titanium X. So the Ford Territory Titanium X, honestly, it doesn't really stand out compared to its peers, but maybe that is exactly what Ford is going for. They want a car that's not supposedly the most advanced out there, but at the end of the day, it satisfies its customers' needs. It's comfortable, it looks pretty good, it still has a modern enough styling, and is also loaded with the tech that you would need on a daily basis. However, there's yet another thing that really helps with the case of the Territory Titanium X, and that is its pricing. Ford Philippines has priced this extremely well at only 1,599,000 pesos. And given everything that this car can provide you and that pricing, it is no wonder that over 15,000 people have already bought this car since its release just a couple of months ago.